Hello my small fat adaptive family, and welcome back to my channel to celebrate my 5 years in ketosis. I wanted to talk about something that's kind of confusing and will usually either deter people from trying keto or make people claim that ketosis is a fad diet. And that topic is the rules of ketosis. Now, technically speaking, there is only one rule to the ketogenic diet, and that is that if you have over 0.5 millimoles per litre of ketones in your blood, you're on keto. You're doing a ketogenic diet. Now, I wish it was as simple as that and I could end the video here, but it's not. If you've researched ketogenic diet, you've likely seen lots of different people say lots of different things about sort of how to approach food on ketosis. And see, the thing is with keto is everybody has their own rules, and that's absolutely okay. It just kind of makes it confusing when you start keto because you don't know whose rules to follow. Now, the reality of it is you should follow whoever's rules you want and whoever you think you should follow. Because at the end of the day, this is your journey, it's nobody else's. So what I'm going to do now is I would like to run you through my personal rules for keto. If you're coming to this channel as a newbie, you know, I've got my keto guide, I've got all these different recipes and things like this, and I think it's important for you to know what the rules I have followed since 2014 are to stay in ketosis for 5 years. Rule number 1 is no brown foods. Now, there's a very specific brown I'm talking about here. You know, if I just meant any food that was the colour brown, that would mean that cocoa nibs would be gone, a lot of nuts would be gone. That's not what I mean. When I say brown foods, I'm talking about the hex code AD8762, or what I like to call cardboard food. So what foods are in the brown foods list? It's basically anything that is made with a flour that isn't flax seeds, chia seeds, lupin flour, almond flour, coconut flour, or any other nut flour. So your breads, your cookies, cakes, donuts, pasta, crackers, muffins, pizza, and so on. Now, most people will call these foods starches, but I've stuck with calling them brown foods from day one because this helped me be aware of what I was looking out for in the supermarket. It's all well and good saying don't eat starches, but if you don't really understand nutrients and ingredients in food, you don't really know what is a starch and what isn't. Whereas if I know I can't have cardboard foods, I don't even bother going down the bread aisle because I know all I'm going to see is my cardboard foods, my brown foods. Rule number 2, it's a no-brainer that keto is a no-grainer. So this is foods such as wheat, barley, rye, corn, rice, millet, oats, quinoa, and so on. No popcorn, no cereal, no porridge, nothing made with one of these grains. Now, I know a lot of these could be added to sort of my no brown food list. However, this is just one of those things that it was easier to segregate them into their own group just for myself to learn what I could and couldn't eat on ketosis. Rule number 3 is no tubers. Tubers is a scientific term for an enlarged structure in some plant species for more storage space. So tubers are sort of potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, cassava, that kind of thing. Rule number 4 is little to no starchy vegetables. So I avoid or try to have as little as possible sort of butternut squashes, pumpkin, any tubers, parsnips, sweet corn, peas. And the kind of way that I learned what was kind of okay and what wasn't was to focus more on eating any vegetable that grew above ground more than any vegetable that grew below ground. So more on sort of leafy greens and things like that as opposed to the things that grow below the ground because they always tend to have more carbs. Rule number 5 is no legumes. My list of legumes has always been in its most simplest form, which is no peas, no beans, no lentils. The only exception I can think to this rule ever has been lupin flour. Rule number 6 is no honey or any other kind of added sugar. There are so many variations of sugar, from glucose to coconut sugar, molasses, maple syrup, you know, all the way through to honey, agave syrup, fructose, that kind of thing. In fact, there's over 60 names for sugars, and I avoid all of them as much as possible. There may be a little bit of sugar in my foods, you know, if I buy something commercial, but I will always go for the lowest sugar item I can find. And I will not buy things like honey or agave syrup to add to my food at all. My food does not contain any sugars, any added sugars. Rule number 7, no drinks that are not calorie and or sugar free. For me, this is just an unneeded waste of my macronutrients, because you do not get satisfaction from using up your daily macros to get energy from a drink, unless of course it is a protein drink. That's the only time that this rule isn't applicable. So in terms of drinks, I tend to just drink either water, caffeine free, Diet Pepsi. I might have a few sugar-free drinks here and there, like Tango do a strawberry watermelon drink that's really, really nice. And I will have caffeine-free coffee, and that's it. I don't drink anything else. Rule number 8 is no chocolate or candy unless it is either dark chocolate or it is made with approved sweeteners. So only in the last sort of 6 months, I began to understand what polyols were and how they worked in foods, and that I could remove them, and which ones had a glycemic index and which ones didn't, and all that kind of confusing things. So right up until 6 months ago, I literally avoided anything that said no sugar but had carbs on the back, but said polyols, because I didn't know what that meant. In terms of chocolate, I eat sort of 85 and 90% unless I can get a chocolate bar that is sweetened with one of my approved sweeteners like stevia or erythritol, and I will have a milk chocolate bar that is sweetened, so it is much, much, much lower in carb than your standard milk chocolate bar. And in terms of sweets, I'll sometimes have maybe 1 a day maximum of sort of rhubarb and custard or Werther's sugar-free butterscotch sweets. All of these sweets have isomalt and sucralose in them, 2 sweeteners that don't really have an effect on my blood sugars. But again, it's not something I massively endorse or approve of to have consistently, because it's just encouraging that sugar craving. Number 9 is no vegetable oils that aren't either cold pressed or extra virgin olive oil. And the reason for this is that vegetables use high amounts of heat, high amounts of pressure, and harmful deodorizing chemicals like hexane. These vegetable oils that aren't cold pressed will cause inflammation. And the thing about keto is that one of its well-known benefits is that it helps aid inflammation and lowers it. Why would I have something that heightens inflammation if I'm doing keto? It just cancels the really big positive out with a negative, so I just avoid them. I tend to either use extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. I don't really use any other oils. Frying butter and sort of animal fat sometimes as well, but that's not an oil. Number 10 is that I will have nothing low fat or fat free unless no sugar has been added. And what I mean by that is that there isn't anything wrong with having low fat foods. You know, as I said, we're all on a different journey and we all sort of have different macronutrients. Mince meat, you can get it in 20% fat and you can get it in 5% fat. I will go for the 5% fat because I want that little bit of extra protein without eating too much fat. However, sort of meat is the only thing you can do this in and have fat free or low fat options, because what happens with things like yogurts most of the time, or burgers or fillers in sausages or anything like that, a lot of the time what happens is that they remove the fat, and to replace the taste that has gone, they add a lot of sugar. If you're going to look at low fat options, you always need to look at the carbs and compare it to the high fat option, because a lot of the time you'll realize that the high fat option has about this much sugar and the low fat option has like this much sugar. Rule number 11 is that I eat little to no fruit, and if I choose to have fruit, it is berries. Fruit is just nature's candy. It's not the same as it was when hunter-gatherers were collecting it. It's sweeter, it's bigger, there's more of it that is edible, and it is easily accessed all year round. And the thing about fructose, which is the sugar that is in fruit, is that it does nothing for our bodies. You know, it doesn't feed our cells, it doesn't help with our muscles or anything like that. It goes straight to the liver, and that's not good. Now, as I said about berries, in terms of fruit, if I do want a, super sweet snack and or feeling sorry for myself or something like that, and I do want a bit of fruit, I will always pick berries, as they are the lowest carb choice out of fruits. But even then, it is still a treat. It is not a common occurrence. Rule number 12 is that most of my food should be raw and require cooking. Don't get me wrong, I'm on no kind of raw diet at all. That's not what keto is about. this is just a way that I taught myself what processed food meant, what was processed and what wasn't. So it's like comparing going to Burger King and grabbing myself a burger and chips without seeing sort of the process of fully how it's made, what ingredients are used, versus buying salad, buying the tomatoes and the cucumbers and things that I have to cut up to go into the salad, buying burgers from the store, you know, organic burgers, cooking them in butter, putting whatever fillers I want into them, that kind of thing. I know what my ingredients are, I know what my oils are, I know what's on or in the burger, therefore I understand that it is a healthier option for me because I've made it myself. Rule number 13 is that I stop eating when I'm hungry. I don't really have meal times. Now, nowadays I do kind of have meal times because I practice intermittent fasting. However, when I started keto, I wasn't focusing on how much I was eating, I was very focused on what I was eating. So what I was doing was learning the difference between I'm bored, therefore I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, therefore I'm hungry, or I need energy, please give me food. Rule number 14 is that I will check all ingredients on any non-food items that are supposed to make me feel better, because you don't even think about the fact that when you start keto, things like cough syrup and lozenges and things like that, they are full of sugar. Like, the main ingredient is usually glucose. You know, sports drinks as well, they don't actually do much for your illness because sugar just causes more inflammation and more bacteria and things like that. So you have to learn to read packaging on pretty much everything. Rule number 15 is no low carb foods until you understand all of the ingredients and how to read nutritional information. Now this, interestingly enough, took me 4 years. When I started this channel, I didn't really understand any of this and I really had to research into it. So for 4 years, pretty much, I just avoided anything that said it was low carb on the packaging. If I didn't make it, I wasn't having it. And when I say things that say low carb, I mean like your Atkins bars, your Quest bars, your protein bars, all those sort of kind of things that usually say in big letters on the front of the packaging, impact carbs or net carbs or anything like that. But when you turn them around and you look at the nutritional information, the carbs are much higher than they're stating. And a big part of this was that I wanted to make sure I was comfortable with understanding how these ingredients affected my body and what made it so that I could have them but not have a blood reaction, and all of those kind of really complicated things that just come with time. Interestingly enough, to this day, I still don't really have these bars. I might have like one or two every couple of months, half a month I'd say is probably what I have. And the reason for this is that these bars to me are something I would call a gateway drug, because these bars are insanely sweet. They are pre-packaged, you don't have to make them, and some of them really taste like foods I used to have when I was high carb. So for example, Grenade do a cookies and cream bar, and it tastes to me just like a Milky Way. Now obviously if I was eating Milky Ways it wouldn't, but because it's been so long since I've had a Milky Way, eating these bars is like eating a Milky Way for me. Now I don't want to fall into the trap of going, well, it's lower carb than a Milky Bar, so I can have one a week, because all this does is just encourages me to have rubbish food, and then one a week will become 2 a week, and then 2 a week will become 3 a week, and I'll be having one every single day, and then wondering why I feel groggy, why my inflammation's worse, all of these kind of things. And number 16 is that I will avoid at all costs the 2 sweeteners, maltitol and sorbitol. These are sugar alcohols, they're polyols, they are found most in the protein bars I just explained. The reason I avoid them is because maltitol, that is derived from maltose, has been shown to raise blood sugars the same amount as table sugar. Now I know through blood testing that it doesn't affect me personally, but I don't want to encourage bad behavior because I don't know what could happen overnight. I could wake up tomorrow and suddenly it could be having a massive effect on my insulin, and I just don't want to take that risk at all. I'd rather just avoid it, stick with my stevia, my erythritol, my monk fruit, and my xylitol. And for sorbitol, Sorbitol seems pretty okay, it's got a low glycemic index, but it is one of the ones that people really flare up for gassiness and problems with your bowels, and I already have quite a gentle stomach, so I don't want to add to that at all. So please remember that these are my ketosis rules. These are the rules that I've lived by for the past 5 years in keto, and these are the rules that have helped me stay really, really strict. And that's the thing, these are very strict rules. I am quite strict when it comes to keto because I have no discipline, so keto keeps me disciplined, this kind of keto. Now remember, you don't have to follow these rules. You can take bits here and there just to remind you, but at the end of the day, it is your keto journey. I'm sharing my rules to you because I have guides and things on this channel, like I said, and I don't want you following a completely different set of rules to me, then following my guide and wondering why it doesn't match up with your keto journey. We are all on a different journey, and what you do may work for you. This is what works for me. I actually began keto with all of these rules printed out on our family board so that we could access them whenever we needed, and now I know pretty much all of them off by heart. Now, I'm really interested to know, to my fat adaptive family, for those of you that have been in keto for quite a while, or even those of you that have been in keto for 3 months, what special rules do you have to keep you on the keto track? Let me know down below, I'd be really interested. And with that being said, that's all for this video. Leave a like if you found it interesting, insightful, or helpful. Subscribe if you are inclined. And as I said, leave any comments for me down below. I'd love to know your opinions. Keep calm, keto on. Thanks for watching.